like you long enough.
The Devil Wears Prada 2 exists in a world where fashion still reigns supreme, but where the cost of glamour is no longer measured only in stilettos and editorials. It's measured in identity, ambition, and the balance between personal truth and public performance. This sequel picks up long after the glittering chaos of the original, showing a world that has grown more connected, more competitive, and more reflective about what style and success really mean. The story treats fashion not as a fantasy bubble, but as a living system that reflects cultural change, personal evolution, and the tensions between tradition and innovation. In doing so, it asks, what happens when the people shaped by an industry that thrives on reinvention are forced to reinvent themselves? The narrative begins with the central character, who once risked everything to break free from the toxicity of her past workplace, now returning in a very different frame of mind. She carries both the memories of who she was and a clarity about who she wants to become, bringing with her the weight of experience and the wisdom gained from having lived in both worlds and stepped beyond them. This transition mirrors larger shifts within the fashion world itself, which has grown less about monolithic authority and more about multiple voices, perspectives, and identities. The protagonist's evolution reflects this shift, suggesting that strength comes from adaptability, self-awareness, and the courage to define success on one's own terms. This new chapter in the story introduces a fashion landscape that blends digital innovation and real-world influence. Runways are no longer the only stage. Virtual platforms, cultural movements, and decentralized communities now drive trends just as powerfully as glossy magazines once did. The film explores how this democratization of style complicates the world of high fashion, creating opportunities for fresh voices while pushing established institutions to justify their relevance. In this environment, every choice, from a viral post to a couture collection, carries meaning beyond mere spectacle. Fashion becomes a conversation about identity, power, and empathy rather than just aesthetics. One of the most compelling developments in the sequel is the return of figures from the protagonist's past who embody both progress and contradiction. These characters arrive with their own growth, regrets, and unresolved tensions, showing how time changes not only ambition, but perspective. Their interactions are marked by awkwardness, nostalgia, and honest confrontation, revealing layers of emotional complexity that were only hinted at before. The shared history between them adds texture to the narrative, making it clear that the past cannot be neatly boxed away just because the industry evolves. It must be acknowledged, learned from, and sometimes reconciled. New figures also enter the scene, defining themselves through fresh aesthetics, bold approaches to identity, and a willingness to dismantle outdated hierarchies. They challenge the established guard with a kind of fearlessness that is both inspiring and unnerving to those who once dominated the field. These newcomers embody a generation that refuses to accept traditions without interrogation, asking whether legacy still matters when innovation spreads rapidly across screens and cities. Their presence pushes the story forward, not just as rivals, but as collaborators who force everyone to reconsider what it means to lead with courage rather than history. The sequel's emotional core stems from the tension between the desire for approval and the need for authenticity. Characters who once sought validation through the nods of elite critics now find themselves questioning whether those accolades ever reflected their true selves. This introspection is present not only in the protagonist, but also in figures who once embodied confidence without doubt. Some cling to the markers of past dominance, while others embrace vulnerability as a source of strength. These contrasting approaches create dramatic friction, reminding viewers that the cost of success often lies not in external achievement but in internal clarity. Through it all, the fashion world serves as both setting and mirror. Runways, events, and campaigns are portrayed less as surface spectacle and more as cultural statements that shape, and are shaped by broader societal conversations. This deeper view suggests that style is political, emotional, and transformative in ways that go beyond visual allure. The choices characters make about what to wear become symbolic acts, reflecting identity, intention, and the courage to stand apart from the crowd. Their wardrobes become metaphors for personal evolution, resisting the temptation to treat clothing as mere costume. A major source of conversation around the story involves how it balances humor with sincerity. Although the film remains sharp and witty, its comedy arises from character truth rather than caricature. Moments of absurdity still delight, but they are grounded in emotional stakes that matter. The sequel uses humor to diffuse tension, not to distract from it, allowing audiences to laugh while also feeling the deeper currents of anxiety, hope, and longing that accompany growth. Music plays a significant role in shaping the atmosphere, blending contemporary rhythms with classic motifs to reflect the tension between innovation and legacy. The soundtrack becomes an emotional barometer, signaling both celebration and introspection, underscoring moments of confrontation as well as quiet self-reflection. In this way, sound becomes as expressive as style, reinforcing the idea that identity is crafted from many senses and experiences, not just visuals. Central to the sequel's heart is the question of belonging. Characters who once felt at odds with the world they inhabited begin to see that belonging does not come from assimilation but from expression, from the courage to claim one's narrative without apology. Some find belonging through collaboration, others through reinvention, and still others through acceptance of imperfections that once felt disqualifying. These journeys are not linear. They twist and turn, revealing that the path to self-realization often requires detours through vulnerability, failure, and unexpected reunion. Tension rises as the protagonist faces opportunities that demand both courage and compromise. Decisions must be made about leadership, influence, and what it means to wield power responsibly. These choices are portrayed not as heroic leaps, but as nuanced negotiations between ambition and empathy. Success is not quantified by accolades or visibility, but by the capacity to lift others, expand conversations, and create spaces where diverse voices can thrive. The film also explores the impact of community in an era defined by connection. Characters discover that influence is not dictated by proximity to old power centers, but by the authenticity of contribution and the courage to uplift those around them. This revelation shifts the narrative from a competitive struggle to a collective evolution, where collaboration and mutual support matter as much as individual achievement. As the story unfolds, past decisions return to shape present outcomes, reminding viewers that growth does not erase history but reframes it. Old regrets become sources of wisdom, unresolved tensions become opportunities for empathy, and memories become tools for understanding rather than anchors that hold characters back. In learning to approach the past with openness rather than avoidance, the protagonists discover that legacy is not a burden but a foundation upon which new ideas can be built. In the closing sequences, challenges that seemed insurmountable early in the story become catalysts for growth and connection. Conflicts resolve not through dominance or surrender, but through dialogues that honor complexity and celebrate transformation. Characters who once defined themselves by adherence to rules now discover that flexibility and openness can be stronger forms of integrity. This evolution is felt not only in individual arcs but in the broader fashion world itself, which emerges from chaos not weakened but refined by diversity of thought and expression. The final moments of the story leave viewers with a sense that the world of style, ambition, and identity is less about perfection and more about authenticity, courage, and resilience. Characters walk away with newfound clarity, forged by conflict but shaped by reflection. The fashion world they inhabit is no longer a monolith, but a kaleidoscope of voices, ideas, experiences, and values that coexist without erasing one another. The Devil Wears Prada 2 ultimately succeeds not by recreating its predecessor, but by expanding its emotional landscape, asking bigger questions about what it means to grow, belong, and define oneself in a world obsessed with surface brilliance. It invites audiences not just to watch, but to feel, to consider their own journeys of self-expression, belonging, and courage. Through laughter, tension, style, and reflection, the sequel becomes more than a fashion story. It becomes a meditation on identity, legacy, evolution, and the courage to stand in one's truth while making space for others to do the same.